So I might have a few years' experience in architecture and also a lot of technology. Now, can I welcome you all to this session? And I think what we're going to try and do is stay here among ourselves, talking rather than use the podium. And if anyone would like to come forward, then we might try and generate a little bit more of a connection between you. So that's up to you entirely. I know some people love to sit in the back, but the closer you are, the better. And particularly when it is about stories that are talking. So, by way of a small personal introduction, I'm honoured very much by being received in the city over many, many years, since I came here as an undergraduate over 35 years ago. And I have many of my own personal tales to tell, which I'm not going to be giving you. So many personal tales which I'm going to be indulging at the moment. But what I will say, that's the base of tale telling, is that Gujaratis love to talk. I mean, there is a constant hum of chat that exists across the city, day and night. So what is the essence of literature? Only the capacity to talk. And talking might be the passing of time, it might be the telling of the weather, or it might actually then be that which becomes a tale, which becomes something which has substance, which becomes something that becomes a thread that gets woven across the city. So we're based here in Ahmedabad. We're connecting to three very different, wonderful people who each have connections to the telling of tales that they want to share. So what we're going to do today is to allow each of them a small moment to present their particular engagement, and then what we want to do is try and connect across each other with stories, and then see how we can engage you in your tales and your understanding of what heritage is, because as you're aware, this literature festival has a theme of heritage, and we're very interested to see that heritage exists beyond architecture and beyond the physical, but that architecture or the city is that which contains the possibility of our own personal heritage. So what I'm going to do is ask Poornima Bhatt to start, and she will, in her own time, give a little narrative of her particular story that she wants to tell.
Amongst the Yoruba people who are from Africa, and many of you probably don't know about them, there is a saying that a river that forgets its source is likely to dry up. A river that forgets its source is destined to dry up. Now, I believe that when it comes to a society also and a people, those who do not honor their heritage, their past, are likely to lose their souls. And so, to me, it is very appropriate that we are talking about heritage today. And I'm a little surprised that I'm doing this because I grew up in Delhi, even though I'm Gujarati originally, and never lived in Gujarat, and the last 50 years I've been in the US, so again I've not stayed there. So the question really is, how am I connecting with my heritage? And I'll quickly tell you, when half a century ago, so that tells you my age also, I used to come to Ahmedabad to spend my summers with my grandmother who lived here. And in her true style, she felt I needed some culture. So she sent me off one day on a day-long trip to look at the architectural marvels of Ahmedabad and the historic side. And I have to say that during that long trip, I'm just a teenager, but during that long trip, we went to Adalaj, and I was absolutely enchanted by the beauty of Adalaj. And it's taken me 50 years to return back to that enchantment that I felt the first time I went to Adalaj. And the last 10 years, I know it's taken, children are born in 1 year, but books sometimes take an endless amount of time. It took me 10 years to research the stepwells of Gujarat. The book came out about 2 years ago. And basically what it does, and I have very little time, so I want to stay within the time. What the book does is to explore, it is her space, her story. So it is not about old stepwells alone or the architectural heritage. It is mainly about the women who came here to fetch water. And I'm trying to draw the relationship between women water, architecture, and religion, and of course literature. Now, I could talk for days and days about this 10-year project, but what I thought, since this is a session on literature, I thought I would simply introduce you to some of the things that I encountered, for which I felt so passionately, and which continue to inspire me to do more work, and so on and so forth. My contact with Ahmedabad's heritage was not just with stepwells when I saw it, the Adane stepwell. My grandmother, and generally one doesn't brag about one's family, but I have to tell you that I don't take any credit for her great achievements. But my grandmother was a very well-known resident of Ahmedabad. She was actually the first woman graduate amongst two Gujarati women. She was amongst those two women to graduate from Gujarat University in 1901. So my first project with Ahmedabad was really writing her biography, translating her biography. Now you may not believe this, but in 1935, she had already, and she was born in 1882. So in 1935, she wrote her own biography, which then I translated into English and Spanish in 1980. So that got me also interested in asking myself, who am I? And where do I come from? And what does this city really mean to me? And I have to say that after living all my life overseas, if you were to ask me and say, which city do you consider your own? And I would say it is Ahmedabad. I have a connection. And my third connection, which is even more surprising, is that my mother died 2 years ago at the age of 98, and I used to come every year from the States for twice a year to look after her. And I used to tell myself, you know, I'm a teacher, I'm basically a professional academic. And how do I justify time spent looking after a beloved mother? At the same time, doing something meaningful so I don't feel resentful about the time I'm taking away from my work. And then it suddenly struck me, here in Ahmedabad are communities that have not been studied very extensively. And so I started again 10 years ago, which now it's just really literally out a week ago. It's called the African Diaspora in India. And I started off with Ahmedabad to look at the descendants of Africans in Gujarat first, and then Pakistan, Goa, Singh, Maldives, and so on and so forth. So that everything I seem to be doing draws me. It's like a love affair with the city. I didn't begin here. I hope I will end up here. So basically that. Now, this is a festival on literature, and I've been feeling very guilty that most of the sessions have not been about pure literature. So I have 7 minutes, and I'm going to read out some of the things. Let's just have fun today, okay? I don't want to be an academic. I just want to share with you the passion that I felt. Now, women, or as all of you probably know better than I do, that women came to these stepwells primarily to fetch water. Okay? They came in the early hours of the morning and at twilight, and they came with their shining brass pots and copper pitchers balanced on their heads to draw water. The sound of their anklets and the music of their laughter and chatter filled the air, and this setting became ultimately a favorite subject for poets and folklorists. They were inspired by this beautiful thing. Now, it is also to an angle to mention that it was not just that they came here for water. Okay? Water was the central thing. Women need to escape the monotony of their lives and the oppression of the joint family sometimes, or a bad husband, or a mother-in-law who gets after them, and they just want to bond with other women. So what I was translating and what I was seeking out was not only about the relationship between water and architecture. I'm sure Arthur can speak much more about architecture. What I'm trying to, can you hear me? Okay, I apologize. I'm a teacher who's used to talking loudly in the classroom and don't know what it is to use a mic. So put your hands up when you can't hear. So basically, they came here for religious rituals. This is where they performed rituals for fertility for many children. This is where they performed rituals to obtain a good husband and to find health, prosperity, and happiness. So some of the songs are about that. There are also songs about sacrifice. I'm just going to pick out a few lines from each one of those. There are, when they came to these step wells, on the way to these step wells to fetch water, they often had chance encounters and secret liaisons with other men, lover friends. Okay? And those are also the subject of these poems. So what we are seeing here is that these women who otherwise we would dispense and say, they are just ordinary women with no great achievements, they are just coming here for water. These women are really talking about their inner lives. And to me, that is heritage. It is not just the beautiful buildings, it is not just Adalat and Rani Ki Vav or Bhai Hari, Dada Hari Ki Vav. It is what went on here and what it did allow women a few moments of leisure time. And when you think about it, consider this. Women in every society in the world hardly ever have time, have leisure time. So this was a wonderful way for them to just while away time, hang out with their girlfriends, with other women, sing songs, badmouth their mother-in-law, and then go away. In a sense, it was a way to renew their universe, to restore themselves so that they could go back. Okay, so they come here. So I mentioned the fact that women came here, keeping track of time, that women come here and took great pride, as you know, in Gujarat, in their shining and glistening pots, which they scrubbed till they shone like the golden rays of the sun. In many of these songs, the women are expressing their longing, not just for a copper pot, not just for a silver pot, but for a golden pot. So one of the two lines I'm going to read to says, I'm not going to draw water from a copper pot, oh mother. She's complaining to her mother. I'm not going to draw water from a copper pot, my mother. Oh mother, I yearn for a golden one. She wants a golden one. The women came to these temples for water, for bathing, for rituals, and I'm going to read a couple of those for you. The woman is in love, okay, and she's had some chance encounters. So she says to her girlfriend at the stepwell, how can I go to fetch water, oh friend of mine? How can I go to fetch water? How can I go to fetch water, oh friend of mine? How can I go to fetch water? A stranger standing at the steps of the well made me bashful and lose all self-control. How can I go to fetch water, my dear friend? See the longing she has for love, and so on. Okay, move on to 3 more songs. By the way, many of our wedding songs in Gujarat are also connected with the step wells, which are of 4 different things. Okay. In one of these poems, the woman says, the rope is 40 arms length long, the rope which she uses to draw water. The rope is 40 arms length long, yet could not reach the water, While waiting for the beloved one, her lover, not her husband, while waiting for the beloved one, the day after all is about to end. So this is the despair she's feeling, that the day has ended and she has not seen her lover. Okay? How many of you know about Madhava? Well, some of you in the audience know about Madhava. Wow. Okay, I'm going to. This is a very famous song, a very famous poem from Bardhaman, from the state of Bardhaman, in the region of Bardhaman.
Can you please?
And
excuse me.
put it out. If I can't find it, I'm going to read and tell you from memory. Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you the story. Perhaps I can tell it equally well. The Vardhan is a dry and arid region, and there is scarcity of water. Now, there is a very common saying that when the rains fail and the wells are dry and arid and there is no water, that the only thing that is going to provide water for survival, and it is really a survival issue, is the sacrifice of human beings. This is the theme of sacrifice is a very important sacrifice in all literary genres. And so in Vardhan, when the step wells were all dry, they called an astrologer and a learned man, and he said, you have to sacrifice the young prince and the princess, a newly married prince of Vardhan. The young prince and princess came forward and offered themselves. So the princess sends a message to her mother to deliver her bridal clothes and all the jewelry, and she was a new bride, and wearing all the garments of her wedding. The young couple, the husband and the wife, start coming down the steps. And as they came down the 5th step and the 4th step, the waters of the well start rising. Okay? And because the well, of course, is a step well, the waters of the well start rising. And in a few moments, as they reach the last few steps, all people could see was the pagadi and the jewelry of the young bridegroom and the bride. Now, what this story is telling us, that they were willing to sacrifice their lives in order to have the village receive the water that is so essential for survival. So stories of sacrifice are very, very important. And I'm going to end in a few okay. The Wagad region is a region again in Gujarat, and again it's an arid, dry region. Now there are many songs there of women, young women, who are desperate because they are not only suffering the oppressions of a society, the taunts of their mother-in-law, they are also suffering from lack of water. So here a young girl sends a message to her grandfather, to her peer, okay? And she says, oh grandfather, kindly do not give your daughters like me in marriage to someone in the Wagad region. She said, just don't marry us into the Wagad region. Oh grandfather, kindly do not give your daughters like me in marriage to someone in the Wagad region. The quarrelsome mother-in-law of Wagad is difficult to deal with. Oh grandfather, she makes me grind corn during the day and spin during the night. Sends me to fetch water late at night prior to the break of dawn, oh grandfather. And the poem ends, and I'm jumping. The pitcher sinks not. She put the pitcher into the step well, but it will not go down, since the rope does not reach the water. My sun has arisen and set on the banks of the well. Oh flying bird, she's making an appeal now to the birds. Oh flying bird, take my message to my grandfather, that your granddaughter has fallen into the well, oh grandfather. So suicide was not uncommon in the steppe world. And so these are some, I would love to, this is part of my life's work, but I would love to, and it's my time to give another people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Poornima. And clearly, that's a wonderfully intimate and passionate connection with a source that's so vital for the survival of any community, water, and then the narrative around that. So can I pass you on to Esther? Esther David, sorry. So Esther, as we know, is connected to the city historically and in that sense spiritually as well. So she comes from a family who's had a deep connection with the city, but she's also lived abroad, and so Ahmedabad is not the only place that nourished her. She's actually had a life elsewhere. And what maybe in the context of living in this city or any city, what tale telling opportunities arise and how that becomes a nourishment for, I suppose, her life in a sense.
While Poornima was talking about, I'll go there. Also dries up. But Ahmedabad has this very interesting, had an interesting history with water, a connection with water. And for me it's very important because I grew up in the old city. That's the Delhi Darwaja side. And then it was connected in a way, in a road that led to the synagogue. Because belonging to a Jewish community, so more or less we were living around from Delhi Darwaja to Khamasa. That was the sort of line. But at that point, while I was very young, Ambawadi and all these areas were being developed. So one had to cross the river. And crossing the river means for me there are only one Ahmedabad. That points out two Ahmedabads actually. One is the real Ahmedabad, that is the old city. And for me, this side of the city is at the moment where I exist. But basically I'm connected only with the old city. So for me, thrice a week going to the old city, walking, that was very important. And when you do this, what I also want to say that with each communal problem in Ahmedabad, our family started migrating. For some reason, they went from Delhi Darwaja to Shahibag. From Shahibag, they moved towards the western parts in 3-4 ways, and then I'm at the moment sort of near Ambawadi. But my main point about the river was that although it was what you call a very moody river. Sometimes there was water, sometimes there was no water, and that was the beauty of it. That's the time we saw all the buffaloes there, or the cloth dyers who dyed cloth there, or the sand, the people who picked up sand on their donkey, this thing to put it for the building industry. And at some point when the first rains came, there were certain communities which grew a lot of what are called like methi and things like that. So for me that was very important. Eventually when it rained heavily, again there is a grandmother in my life who, I was the youngest in 40, like a family of 40. So, and both my father was making the zoo in Ahmedabad, my mother was a school teacher. So I was left alone with my grandmother, and she was very good at family stories. And then she employed somebody called Mani, whose real name was Mumtaz Begum. So Mumtaz and Mani, this for me they two became, she's one person, but for me like she told me a lot of city stories. Grandmother told me a lot of family stories. So as soon as there were heavy rains, what we call Ghodapur in Gujarati, if everybody knows Gujarati, if you don't know, it's like racing horses. So the river was a comparison to horses running. And eventually everybody would say, let's go to Ellis Bridge. It was called Lakkadiya Pool at that time, because before this structure there was a wooden structure, and then this structure, now even this has become something that nobody knows what to do with. So the river became very important for me. So everybody took those big black umbrellas and we went to look at the river, water. At the moment my problem with Ahmedabad is that the water is continuously there. I won't say that it's flowing. That's my problem, but it's my problem. I don't want to make it into a big thing. Sometimes I feel that a river that was flowing in this very eccentric way had its own beauty. Now, going back to the old city, what attracts me is the density. The second thing is the friendliness. Now in all these years, I just have to walk through from Bhadra temple to Manik Chowk and I meet that's the beauty of Ahmedabad. You meet so many people, auntie, how are you, auntie, I saw you, auntie this, auntie, I saw you in the newspaper, auntie this. So they have all sorts of stories. And then somebody has family stories, somebody has these stories. And the best part is city stories. So I became a writer, as I was introduced from artist to writer, I somehow found that every time my narration would end up in Ahmedabad with the city and the old city and the river and the people and the stories would come back to me. And somehow when you are traveling and coming back and forth, the edges of a city become sharper in your mind. Like say, when you talked about Lakshmi ji, Goddess Lakshmi coming to Ahmedabad, for me that's the most important part. When it was decided that Ahmedabad is a heritage city, I was wondering, so that day I really walked up to the Goklo, where at the Darwaja, where you can light a lamp and pay the old lady that Bhai is no longer there, but his wife is there. And you give her, say, 50 rupees to survive just to light the candle lamp. And it's a little Goklo. I don't know how many of you have seen. All of you have seen the Goklo? Lakshmi ji no Goklo? No? Yes? Okay. It's very beautiful. Do see it. It's in the middle, central part. But when I went there, I saw that there was a big garbage dump behind the Goklo. And I think when we talk about heritage, the first thing we have to do is start thinking about, it's the beginning, it's not the end. So we have to start doing up the city. We have to see to it that areas are nicely sort of presented. But the second part that bothers me, can I talk about botheration after is that once it was declared, I am very sorry to say that I've gone through all the newspapers, a lot of press keeps coming and talking to me, as you said that I have stories of Ahmedabad. But I have not been able to understand which exactly is the heritage city. How do you navigate through the city? From where do I go? Do I jump from Bhadra to Teen Darwaja? From there, do I jump to the Jama Masjid? From there, I jump to Manik Chowk. From there, I jump on the left side to Hasti Bibi. And from there, I go on the right side to Sharlam. And then, feel like I'm transformed into an octopus. Or the city has transformed. Both of us have transformed into an octopus, which I cannot handle. But I enjoy it.
Given that you are in this wonderful metaphor, the whole point is that you have navigated, and that you have actually a wonderful way of embracing the city, that this is happening now, that's something else. But you have been navigating yourself and giving us a way around the city. So then that issue doesn't really arise for you, because in fact you've already brought us there. So can I bring you back to that place?
Yes. Go back there.
To that place where it became, so the source for you. So the fact that the city is becoming something else as a designated heritage city, our point.
But
our point is that heritage is not just about somebody else's notion of what a city should be, but it's what each of us have as an experience of the city that is the most precious thing. So it's not necessarily about the walls or about the gateways or this or that, but it's our living experience of a city, and all that you have observed, that's what matters. And that is the richness, ultimately, of a city. It's what it contains.
Okay. So, my favorite places, I'll tell you. One is this Goddess Lakshmi's Goklo. The second, Hasti Bibi Goklo, which is at the end of Relief Road. You go and turn on the left. She's very small. It's very small. And she's supposed to, if you go to, it said there was this Hasti Bibi a lot of years back, and if a child was 500 years back. And now these are stories people tell me, I just collect stories. I'm not a historian. So they say that every time a child was crying or sick, she would just hold the child in her arms and the child would stop crying. So even now, people go in holds to this place. It's like if you walk even a step backwards, a rickshaw or a vehicle can hit you. So it's a very dangerous little hasti baby. Where Friday, Thursdays you have to go there with if your child is sick or crying. And on the 7th, after the 7th Thursday, the child gets well. You are supposed to offer jalebis because she had a sweet tooth and Ahmedabad is known for jalebis, so you offer jalebis. So this is one of the beauties. The second is biscuit gully, which always, every time I say this, I'm going to biscuit gully. On the rickshaw, some rickshawalas understand. The rickshawalas, after a point from the west, they don't understand when I say biscuit gully. Thrandawala, that's what I have to say. So I go to biscuit gully, and whenever I say biscuit gully, a lot of people ask me, what is biscuit gully? Is it like a house like Hansel and Gretel where everything is made of biscuits and cakes and things like that? No. There are 3 little shops now. In the old times there were many more shops. And these are these have the best, still have the best biscuits, puffs, and there's a little chai ka galla there. But the best part is that if you go a little inside, there is one tea stall, and after that I will end, which has a wall. That is, now when you were talking of the pots, Poornima, brass pots, this is Mandvini pole. And Mandvini pole is where everybody goes with their old pots, and they give the old pots for melting, and they buy steel and things like that. Fortunately, we have Vishala Museum where we can still see some of our heritage there. So, right at the between Mandvini Pole and Manek Chowk Big Bazaar, the vegetable market, there is a wall where there is Manek Bhai. Now there is Manek story of Ahmed Shah, Manek Baba. This tea stall with a whole wall with all the photographs of the gods. It's like a pop art installation. He has the best chai ki tea. Where I stop. So for me, this is Ahmedabad. For me, this side of the place is where I write. That is where I live, and I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you very much indeed. And so, I mean, the city offers this possibility of engagement to all of us. So the fact that you've been able to express it so wonderfully, it's an inspiration for the rest of us. So can I pass on to Vikramjit, who's going to come from another perspective altogether to tell us a few tales. Thank you.
Well, I would like to connect these tales to you. So let me start by asking a question. How many of you know the meaning of your name? You can raise your hands. How many of you know the meaning of your name? और जिनके हाथ अभी नीचे हैं प्लीज घर जाके अपने नाम का मतलब जरूर लिखें. See, we were living in India. Our parents think for so long before naming us. Are we actually doing justice to that name? I asked my father why he is named Vikramjit, and he told me that I used to love Samrat Vikramjit. He was such a great king, this and that, and even Vikram Samvat is named after him. So I started reading about Vikramjit, who this Vikramjit is, and I figured out that there are so many kings who were named Vikramjit after whenever they were coronated. They styled themselves as Vikramjit. Even the last Hindu king of Delhi, Raja Hemu. You've seen Jodha Akbar movie? So Jodha Akbar, there is a scene where Akbar gets hold of this guy, rather Bahram Khan catches this guy who's wearing a white turban and a white robe, and he's on his knees, half dead, beaten up to death to an extent, and then Bahram Khan tells Akbar to assassinate him, to kill him, pick up the sword, and Akbar says, "ये तो पहले ही मरा हुआ है, मरे हुए को मैं और क्या मार सकता हूँ?" And I don't kill him. Then Bahram Khan asks all the soldiers to cover up, and then he kills, but he says, "नहीं, ये तो Akbar ने मारा, तो Akbar आज से गाजी हुए." That was Raja Hemu, Samrat Hemchandra Vikramaditya. So why Vikramjit? Why Vikramaditya? My story started from there, and when I started reading that, I realized that this guy was from Ujjain near Bhopal, Vidisha. There is another person from his court. I'm just cutting that part short. Whatever he did, and then there is another person associated with another Vikramaditya, one of his successors, known as Varamihir, the astronomer Varamihir, amazing mathematician who established his observatory in area which in Jainpatta is mentioned as Mihirapuri, which later became Mehrauli, which is in Delhi. So all of a sudden, I was trying to find out the meaning of my name, and I came back to my own city, the city of Mehrauli, where I have been doing my research, and how all those pieces connected. There's an iron pillar, if you know what Qutub Minar, there's an iron pillar which was actually established in Vidisha, in Bhopal, during Vikramjit's period. So made of wood steel which went to Syria, became Damascus plate, one of the best plates in the world. Damascus steel comes out of that wood steel which is there in Delhi. Then during Vikramjit's period, Vishnu Puran was written. Panch Siddhant, Rome ka, Pol ka Siddhant, where they studied how Romans are functioning, how Poles are functioning. All these things, all of a sudden, when we were connecting these dots, and I was going through this research, I realized that I cannot define a single city with a single story, even if it is my story. The moment I start from myself, entire globe becomes one village. And I am so glad that we started this discussion from water bodies, because most of these stories revolve around water bodies. The other important element, if you want to study a city, should be, I think, language. So I come, or rather my parents come from Punjab. So wherever I go, people say कि आपको तो पंजाबी आती होगी, आप तो पंजाबी बोलते हैं. I don't speak Punjabi. I speak Dwabi. There is a region Malwa. They speak Malwai. There is a region Majha. They speak Majhi, Changi, Multani, Gargaj. There are different languages who were reduced to become dialects, and now collectively they are known as Punjabi. And all these, including Gujarati, have come out of something called Shirasini, one of the dialects, or one of the branches of Prakrit. So how these languages evolved, and why I have taken up this topic is because there is this one language known as Saraiki, which is now that portion of Punjab has gone to Pakistan, and the biggest portion of Punjabi-speaking Pakistani population speaks Saraiki. What is Saraiki? Saraiki is basically spoken in the region which is the confluence of some say Silk Route and Spice Route, or a major trade hub. And you know what Kerama Sarai? Sarais we have everywhere on the trade routes. So we have got Sarais. So that region was the hub of Sarais, and the language over there was developed in these Sarais. So that is why it is known as Saraiki, which means that this language has got words donated by people from different regions. So there could be a word from Tamil, there could be a word from Bangla, there could be a word from even people coming from Mongolia and China and Tibet. They have donated words to this language. So it's a very beautiful language. I love listening to songs from that language. Another thing that we have done to ourselves is not only we have forgotten our stories, our history, we have also forgotten the rhythm. All these stories that we have been talking about, and when you were sharing all those folklores, they all have a rhythm. They are all poetic. And while you were talking, continuously songs were in my head कि पंजाब के अंदर ये folk tales चलती हैं. अच्छा, is it okay if I continue speaking in Hindi? Everybody is comfortable in Hindi? Can I also switch to Urdu?
Yes.
Yes.
Half of you understand, half of you don't. But जिनको उर्दू नहीं आती उनको हिंदी तो आती है. टेस्ट लो आपका. अच्छा, मुझे ये बताइए बिल्डिंग को हिंदी में क्या कहते हैं?
उर्दू है ये, उर्दू वर्ड है.
चेयर को क्या कहते हैं?
Kursi.
That's Arabic.
Kursi.
That's Arabic. आसन.
Asan is not kursi.
हमने भारत में 4 पायों वाली कुर्सी पहले बनाई नहीं थी. So अगर आप सिंह आसन या राजा के आसन की बात करेंगे, जहां वो गद्दी हुआ करती थी. Now this is exactly the point that I shared. This is what I actually wanted to tell you, that our story is not just the word that we use. You have to go back to that era to understand that word. Do you know the Hindi for divorce? Please don't say talaq. That's also Arabic. Don't say संबंध विच्छेद. संबंध विच्छेद किन्हीं भी 2 लोगों में हो सकता है. So it's the correct translation for divorce. Do we have a Hindi word for that? It's probably the most difficult question. Yes, because we don't have a Hindi word for talaq. Why? Because I have actually read so many books. I have read Manusmriti, I have read all those Vara's books, whatever laws that Vara has written, Varamihir, just to try to find out कि अगर husband और wife में झगड़ा हो रहा है, अगर सास के साथ प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, अगर ननद के साथ प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, how do they tackle it? there is no provision of divorce. They have given solutions to tackle. They have even given solutions that if they want to live separately, these are the laws, but still they are married to each other. They can live separately, but they have to stay married for 9 lives. It's 7 lives. 7 जन्मों तक तो साथ रहना ही है. So divorce का concept ही नहीं है. तो आपके एक वर्ड की ट्रांसलेशन आपने डेवलप कर दी, आपका पूरा का पूरा कल्चर चेंज हो गया उसके बाद. और ये सारे जो कल्चर्स हैं, ये वाटर बॉडीज के अराउंड इन्वॉल्व करते हैं. पंजाबी में एक मेरे को याद आ रहा था, एक लोकगीत है कि कुएं ते पानी भरे दिए मुटियारे दी. So there is this guy who walks into the village and there is a well outside the village where he finds a lady who is fetching water from the well, and he starts a conversation. And long story short, turns out that this guy is actually her husband because they were married when they were young. This guy joined army, so he went off and family members went और वो लड़की को घर ले आए थे आफ्टर दैट सर्टेन एज, मुकलावा आप पंजाबी में बोलते हैं, और उसने कभी अपने हस्बैंड को देखा नहीं था. Again a complete different kind of society functioning here, which probably we don't understand. I want to share one last thing in this. Stories of a place are told in a different manner. We had a session on mythology, one session before Gandhi ji वाला session लिया हमने गांधी जी में. इससे पहले जो mythology वाला session था जिसमें हम बात कर रहे थे कि रामायण और महाभारत के कितने वर्जन्स एग्जिस्ट करते हैं इंडिया के अंदर. पंजाब के अंदर जब ये वर्जन्स ट्रांसलेट हुए थे तो वहां पर गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी ने सबसे ज्यादा इनके बारे में लिखा है. ज्यादातर लोगों को नहीं पता है. लोगों को लगता है कि सिखों का धर्मगुरु गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब है, सिख गुरुओं की वाणी उसमें होगी. There are 34 people who have contributed to that one book and there are only 6 Sikh gurus in that. बाकी there are Muslims, Hindus, people from all walks of life. कबीर, तुलसीदास, नामदेव, हर तरह के लोग हैं उसमें. और गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी की वाणी उसमें नहीं है, वो अलग है. दसम ग्रंथ में जिसमें उन्होंने कृष्ण अवतार, रामा अवतार, विष्णु के अवतार, बाकी 24 अवतार एक वाणी है, अकाल पुरख की उस्तत, उन्होंने ये चीजें लिखी है. खाली भगवान कृष्ण की बांसुरी को उन्होंने डिस्क्राइब किया है. गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी से कि रागों के नाम, काफी नामों से आप फेमिलियर होंगे, मैं कुछ रागों के नाम लेने लगा जो गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी ने अपनी बुक में लिखे हैं कि कैसे जब भगवान कृष्ण के हाथ में बांसुरी आती थी और राग क्या निकलते थे कि बाजत बसंत अर भैरव हिंडोल राग, बाजत है ललिता के साथ है तनासरी, मालवा कल्याण अर मालपौस मारू राग, बन में बजावे कान मंगल निवासरी, सुरी और असुरी और पन की जे होती तहां तो निके सुनत पहना रही सुध जासरी, कहे ए हो दासरी सो ऐसी बजी बासरी, सो मेरे यानी यहाँ में सब राग को निवासरी. That's how it's a little longer. It describes, it tells a story that this used to be a person और एक बांसुरी, एक खाली खोखली बांसुरी उनके हाथ में आई थी, ये होता था. This is the man when he's standing in the battlefield. तो वहाँ पर स्टोरी सुना रहे हैं, जो तलवारों की आवाजें, तीनों की आवाजें उनको सुनाई दे रही हैं, उस पर उन्होंने राग निकाल दिया. कागड़दन ताटी कटारी गड़ाहम तागड़दन तीन तो पकम तड़ाहम जागड़दन नागड़दन बागड़दन बाज गागड़दन गाज महागाजे गाज. It's one of the ragas that he has produced. And when I go and teach, I conduct workshops with teachers and I tell them that history is not boring. लेकिन हमें history boring बना दी गई है. We don't hate history, probably we hate our teachers, we hate our books. And one last verse is, I'm going to give you a very small snippet from history. यहाँ पर history किसको boring लगती है? Do we have people here जिनको history boring लगती है? Okay, we have. मुझे भी boring लगती थी स्कूल में. And then I heard things like this. आपने झांसी की रानी को पोएम सुनी है ना? खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी. सिंहासन हिल उठे राजवंशों ने प्रगति तानी थी. बूढ़े भारत में आई फिर से नई जवानी थी. दूर फिरंगी को करने की सबने मन में ठानी थी. जब उठी सन 57 में वह तलवार पुरानी थी. खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी. Read the entire poem. It is nothing but piece of history. हमने अपनी स्टोरीज को बोरिंग बना लिया है जब हमने उसको पोएम से प्रोज में लिया है, जब उसको ऐसे लिखने लग गए जैसे यूरोपियन स्टाइल रहा है. There always have to be a moral of the story, जबकि हमारे पास moral of the story कभी नहीं होता था. गीता सार भी 1 पेज लंबा है. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
I want to just, if I may, make a little connection here to invite you then to, so what is, in essence, what we are about the lives of ordinary people, and what are we only ordinary people. And so the challenge for us today is to continue storytelling, to continue tale-telling, and to understand that each of our lives is this possibility. Now, we may not be on horseback, we may not be in a stepwell, we may not be worshipping at this shrine for crying babies, but we are living lives. So our lives are actually the stuff of what heritage is being made of. So I'm just challenging you, inviting you to make that connection. And don't imagine that heritage is something else or out there. Heritage is us. We are the stuff of heritage. And it's not just that you have to be a Superman, it's the ordinary, wonderful stuff of your lives that actually makes heritage. So would anyone like to share or be challenged by this or want to extend any story that they're already familiar with? Is that too big a jump to be made?
I'm just
Yeah. Too shy.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure having you all over here. I would just like to invite Akshata to hand over the memento to Vikramjit sir. Thank you, thanks a lot. This has been an extremely enriching session.